So I think we can open the floor if there are any questions or comments for any of our speakers for a few minutes, and then we will proceed to tea and hopefully discussions then and bring us back in 10 or 15 minutes. So we've got... you do, okay. So we have a question here, first of all.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much. Suraj is leaving one of the questions was last time. Okay. My first question is from Ms. Kufi, and first of all, thank you very much for that inspirational speech. It was very beautiful, and we know each other, and just wanted to ask something about, you touched upon the culture in Afghanistan, and as someone from the northern part of Afghanistan where you are from, and we have very different cultures. Afghanistan is a very diverse country, for instance, and from north, from a very rural area, someone like Ms. Kofi can be selected in the parliament and even create buzz that she is going to be the president of Afghanistan one day, and can be nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. And if you go then to the southern part of Afghanistan, in the similar, very rural areas, we have people who even are criticizing the girls' right to go to school. So in that sort of like diverse culture society that we have, what sort of approach you suggest, Ms. Kofi, that can be good to practice with, that can not backlash in one side of the country and also can make someone happy in the other side of the country? And the question to Mr. Siraj, it was very good, and the question is, yesterday we were celebrating, Ms. Kofi was there during the Parliament, 24th anniversary, date anniversary of Ahmad Shah Massoud, the national hero of Afghanistan. But you just said, 24 years ago, he mentioned exactly these words, that Afghanistan has become a center of terrorism. That terrorism will expand to all over the world. And that happened by 9/11 attack on the US, and past 25 years that to this day we are seeing. Now, just a few weeks ago, the Syrian ambassador to the UN Security Council said that even the terrorists from Syria are now moving to Afghanistan, and we have Al-Qaeda, as Siraj said. Why do you think, Siraj, that the world is ignoring this very dangerous warnings that is coming from everywhere? Why is that? What is it? Because they don't have any policy, or they just want to see how it is going?
Sorry, Jim, shall we answer that one by one, or shall we take the question and then at the end they will answer? I don't know. What do you mean?
It's up to you. You might forget the question. So let me answer this one, and then we'll take a couple more.
Yeah.
Okay. No, on the cultural aspect, well, of course, we know each other from very long. I know your family, you just like. On the cultural aspect of the situation, well, every society has their own cultural values. But even cultural values transform over time, as interpretation over religious values transform. If you look at interpretation over some of the principles of Islam, even, it has evolved and expanded. So cultural values also expand. In Afghanistan, some parts, it is the most diverse society. There are 29 local languages spoken in Afghanistan, more than 29 ethnic groups. And everyone wants to be recognized and deserves to be recognized in their own way. Some societies have adopted to the changes quickly, have changed some of the wrong aspect of the culture. They have adopted more positively to the culture. I must say that during the 5 decades of war, there has been also backwarding in some societies in terms of cultural practices as well. And I would say that, for instance, given the long uncontrolled border we have with Pakistan, for instance, South and East have been mainly affected by the cultural norms due to the war, but even before that. So in North and Northeast, you have more openness towards, and in fact, they were even more open, I would say, during the 50s and 60s. As Professor Magnus is not here, he mentioned about the Bukhara and Samarkand during the Sufism of Islam, that they were spiritual kind of Islamic jurisprudence. The way they were practicing religion was by daf and musical instrument that existed in our society until recently. Like even before 20 years, there was a part of jurisprudence of religion in where I come from, where people practice Islamic practices by using these musical instruments. So that part was hugely influenced by Sufi Islam, which is a spiritual kind of Islam, and their interpretation of culture was different. Now, moving forward, how should we live? I think one of the things is that we need to let people decide how they want to live and how they want to be governed. It's the fundamental principle. People need to have the will to choose their, the right to choose their will, to choose their future government. If they have that, I mean, democracy probably in the global north is being challenged. As many global order is being challenged, multilateralism is being challenged, democracy is challenged. But I still believe if people are given the right to choose how they want to be governed, they will have the right to exercise their cultural values in their own ways. So I don't need to practice something that is not common to my culture, not common to my values. I don't need to do that. But unfortunately now, the Taliban ideology is that you either believe the way I do, or you do not have the right to exist. Which is not even Islamic. Because in Islam it says, Allah says, I created you by ethnic groups, by different religion, so that you could understand each other. You could relate to each other. You could recognize one another. But the Taliban go against that. And the Taliban, in fact, believe that only a small group of religious people autocratically have the right to vote. When we were negotiating, they were telling me that, you believe people who live under PRISA, referring to the addicted people, do they have the right to vote? Of course they don't, because they believe only people who are coming from the elite, and the interpretation of elite is religious elite. And that religious elite, from their perspective, is also very particular, because some of the people who they believe were religious elites, they do not even have basic understanding of Islam. So, according to them, only a small group of people have the right to say or choose a government. And my concern is and I was just sharing this with Professor Landa here, that over time, maybe in a few years, the public will also accept this sentiment. The sentiment that only few people have the right to do politics and be in the government. We are the obedient. That culture of obedience we must resist. Because the moment you resist the culture of obedience, then you can stand on your own principles of culture and values.
Thank you very much. First of all, when National Hero Commander Ahmad Shah Massoud, those days saying those words, nobody took him serious until the real impact happened. And after that, people started talking about that fact. The reality is the picture which is building up in Afghanistan, the picture of threat, it's far more devastating than those days that we saw it. The reasons that why the West is not as much concerned for Al-Qaeda and for the other terrorist groups as they should be, I think, from my understanding, there are a few reasons. First of all, it's the issue of resources. No country has infinite resources to spend their money and resources on every priority that they have. So what they do, they narrow it down to 3 or 4. And now, because of the issues of China, the rise of China, and the rise of China started from 2010, the pivot of Asia. those were the days that the US started to dedicate more and more resources towards China. So the rise of China is way more important for them, and they have a lot of problems in that area, like protecting Taiwan to so many contentious islands and Philippines and so on. So by far that's priority number one. And then the issues in Europe and Russia, it's by far more important for them than dealing with the issue of the terrorism. The other reason is perhaps the Western countries know that for the time being, the first line of threat is to the regional countries. They should deal with the situation. China should take it, or the other countries in the region will be affected more. Pakistan will be affected more. Although there is still a lot of debate between the Afghans that they think that whatever is happening is just a show. But the reality is no, Pakistan is deep in crisis, and they will face that situation. And there will be some other priorities that they have. And the last thing that I've seen with some of our Western friends, it's a level of naivety. Some people want to see the world as they wish to see it. So they think by saying that terrorism is not a problem, then terrorism will also suddenly become not a problem to them. And because their priorities do not fall in that line, even if you talk to some of them about the threat of Al-Qaeda, they don't like it. They just, again, as I said, we were called the peace spoilers during the Republic, because we were very negative about what was happening. And they didn't want to hear that, and they were calling us the peace spoilers. Even today, when we talk about these things, they don't like it. They just want to say that, well, talk about some progress and some of the positives that happens in that area. So, again, the last thing I want to say is that the people in Al-Qaeda, they are very, very intelligent. There is no doubt about it. The West has studied Al-Qaeda, and I think the Al-Qaeda people have studied the West. They know what the Westerns expect. They know how to act. They know how to deal with the situation. And they know how to show their face in a very humane kind of way to get the sympathy and support from the Western people. So, I apologize if I exceeded my allocated time, but these were my ideas of why.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can probably take maybe one more question and then we want to break up. Yep.
Mr. Shahiyar, it's a Council of Elegant Council.
If we keep it, we take a couple, if we keep it very short, if we can.
Good afternoon, thank you. My name is Shahiyar, I'm the local councillor. First of all, congratulations to have a great event here, a gathering, a beautiful community. That takes great effort, and well done, Mr. Jama. And also, we have beautiful panelists, great presentation. Thank you. A comment and then a question. I saw when I was growing up in Pakistan, I saw Hikmat and Jamaat Islami and all those groups got involved into fighting when they wanted to break the Soviet Union. And then Western world, America, they all were very much interested to support everybody over there. And then we saw a clip of Hillary Clinton that we created Mujahideen, and then we left them there to fight with each other. When you see the clash between the civilizations, and the aftermath is beyond your imagination what will happen when everyone will leave you in a cultural mess. So Afghanistan is a great country. Now, what we see, what a few leaders in the West and America, what they are saying, and then the significance of Afghanistan, of regionally the world has seen. So now my question is, would the Afghanistan be able to afford another regime change, or we as the community, as the international community, help them to have some reforms within the current setup? Thank you.
That's probably a big question, but if I can ask you to answer it as quickly as possible, I think that's probably a tall order.
Well, thank you very much. It was also a pleasure that we had the chance to talk and understand each other. Yes, some of those groups that you talked about, one thing that people don't know about their strength, how strong they are. The influence of Lashkar-e-Taiba, for example, in the east of Afghanistan is huge, and the number of the people that they have is huge. They have been designed to fight India, and that's why dealing with the crisis in Afghanistan, it seems much easier for them. And if you go to the south of Afghanistan, Kandahar and Helmand, and these areas of Ghazni, you see a lot of Jaish-e-Mohammed people because of the ideology, of the shared ideology of that they have with the Taliban leadership, humanity that makes them very close. So just quickly to your question, I think this regime does not have, this regime in Afghanistan does not have legitimacy. People have not voted for it. People have not accepted it. So they have come by force, by killing, by atrocity. So that's why the majority of the people of Afghanistan, over 90%, if you talk to them, they just don't accept it as a regime. And especially with the things that they're doing, as I said, it's not only it's creating everyday catastrophe for the Afghan people, it will create a big catastrophe for regional countries, including Pakistan. And the number of the TTP fighters in Afghanistan, it's around 6,000-7,000 now. With their families, they are around 70,000 people. And the only thing they want is cessation of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa from Pakistan. So as a Pakistani, can you accept that? If you can accept it, then it's something that we can debate about. So the regime change, it's the wish of the Afghan people that they should see again a level of democracy, or the way that they should be able to handle the situation and be part of the government. And as long as that thing is not happening, I think the international community, we will have to have some dialogue with them and tell them the facts and realities that why that is needed and why the continuation of Taliban is a disaster for everyone.
I'll just briefly, before I need to excuse myself, as I say that 4:15, I think the regime change in Afghanistan is inevitable. This is something, not from theory, but from any angle. If you look at the situation, no power can last on the basis of exclusion. The Taliban are excluding everyone in Afghanistan, and that will not last. In addition to that, of course, the power dynamics in the region and beyond will have a role to play. Many people, when the Russians recognized Taliban in June, was it right? In June, the assumption was that this might lead to further recognition, but even then I thought in the midst of crisis there is always opportunity, although it was a crisis news for us, but the opportunity was that I think we have now more clarity from a global perspective on the situation in Afghanistan. But I think this time we have learned our lesson. And here I'm not talking about the fact that there are now between 19 to 25 military extremist groups, some of which, my friend referred to, operates between Central Asia and South Asia, TTP now being the major one. Al-Qaeda, if you refer to the UN committee, Al-Qaeda committee, the recent report, the one that was published in May, April, May, clearly talks about existence of these military extremist groups, including ISIS, Al-Qaeda, TTP, but also other smaller groups that Mr. Sarraj referred to. I'm not even talking about how much of a threat they would pose that could lead to potential regime change. From every angle, I think there is a potential for change. But this time, I think the lessons we learned is the post-Taliban era. How do we envision a post-Taliban era? Is it a government with the Taliban or a government without the Taliban? This is something we need to talk among ourselves. The non-Taliban community of Afghanistan need to talk among themselves and agree on a narrative. It has been a challenge over the last 4 years on what kind of a future we envision for Afghanistan to mobilize people around that narrative in Afghanistan, because people need to have a narrative to mobilize and to a leadership to lead that narrative. This is something we want to have our own organic space to discuss. Because I think one of the lessons that we learned was the fact that laws were translated for us from English or French, and that concepts were made for us in the Western capitals. And I agree with Professor Magnus that the terms, the important terms like capacity building, or the terms that were important like Afghan ownership, Afghan leadership, which was on the contrary, we were lacking that ownership and leadership. So I think this time the leadership and ownership of people of Afghanistan must be recognized, given that space. And I think we have, even if we go along that narrative, the lowest rated capacity building, we have enough capacity in Afghanistan, even in exile, to create their own narrative and lead. But change, definitely, it's one of the narratives. Change is the constant that we need to lead.